When I started in the IAS, I had no idea that I would ever end up in the automobile industry. Nobody from the IAS ever ends up in the automobile industry. There was no automobile industry in India. How this came about is another story, but that's how the way it happened.
Namaste and welcome to Gagri of Tales. The world knows you as a person who's changed the face of the Indian automobile industry. The company which you are heading and have been at the helm of affairs for the past 40 years continues to lead the automobile sector since decades. Your efforts have been lauded both in India with the Padma Bhushan and in Japan with the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Star. Above that, I believe that you have a philosophical side to life as well and have encountered many spiritual masters and have actually seen them perform miracles.
Well, I'm not, I don't quite understand what a spiritual person or a spiritual side of a person exactly means. But yes, I have met people who have been spiritual leaders, and I have experienced some of the phenomena with them which are very difficult to explain and which only seem to indicate that yes, there is a higher power somewhere. Now, whether that higher power is a God, what is the manifestation of God, this people argue about. I don't want to get into that. But I do believe that there is a higher power which controls a lot of things which happen in this world. I also believe that if you call that higher power a God, which is fine, God is not an entity whom you can look upon to say that I've prayed to God for X number of things and they haven't happened, therefore I don't believe there's a God. I don't think God dispenses, patronage or favors or gifts to people merely because they go and pray and then do something else in their lives. I think what happens to your life is a product of what you do in your life, how you do it, with what intentions you do it, and then the kind of blessing which that higher power bestows upon your efforts. So in that sense, if you say I'm spiritual, yes, I believe that there is a higher power. But if it's spiritual in the sense that do I keep going to spiritual leaders, do I act on their advice, and is my personal life and my personal events determined by what they tell me that this is a good day, this is a bad day, don't do it this month, do it next month, all of that, I don't follow any of that. I do things according to what I find is the right time in my judgment to do things. And I have not found any reason to regret doing it that way.
Let us start with your childhood. Could you tell us something about your formative years?
I must say that I owe a very great deal to my parents and my family. You know, we were a large family growing up. I was the youngest of 5 brothers. And my father and my mother brought up this large family, despite my father being a government servant and not therefore being eligible for any large incomes and things. But he brought us up in a manner which instilled in us some excellent values. And those values got reinforced because, again, my parents attached the highest importance to giving the best of education to all the children. And with this best of schools which I went to, and the parent at his home, then you learned all the good values of of consideration for others, of punctuality, of integrity, of having a kind of an honor system and not being afraid to admit your mistakes, of, of not being selfish, working in a manner which you were caring for others. Because in a large family, and when you are the youngest, you couldn't afford to be selfish. You had to care for everybody else in the family. And you had to do tasks in the school, especially. You had to be disciplined. You had to do what you were supposed to do, even if nobody was supervising you. So that discipline of doing what you had to do, of the dignity of labor. In school, we did everything for ourselves, whether it was making our beds, whether it was polishing our shoes, whether it was serving on the tables, whether it was even cleaning of dishes. Every work was done. We had what was known as a quota system for labor work. And you had to do that every week. And amongst the things which we used to do was to look after the poorer people, to look after their welfare, to clean things around them.
During your time in Dehradun, did you encounter any spiritual masters who could heal people?
My parents had a guru. We had a family guru. He was known as Shastri Ji. And he was obviously very learned in all respects and all that. And he would come home and he would, of course, in many ways guide my parents and what we were supposed to be doing. One of the phenomena which I was talking about, which I can't explain, I still have no explanation, was that while we were at school, my elder brother and I, we both got food poisoning. The food poisoning came because they used to make ice cream from condensed milk was used. And I think one of the tins or more than one tin was damaged. And that caused very serious food poisoning. And I think in our house, and each house had about 70 or 80 boys, most of the boys fell ill. Actually, one boy died also. And we were day scholars, so we came home quickly. We were picked up and brought home. And both my brother and I were very, very sick. We were, you know what happens in food poisoning. In the evening, Shastri Ji came. And he said that, look, I'm able to cure one of you too. And I'll take whichever brother is more serious than the other. My elder brother actually was worse than I was. I was pretty bad, but he was even worse than that. So he told everybody to leave the room. There were two of us left in the room in our beds. And he got a bowl of water. And the room was completely in the dark. And then for the next 15 minutes or so, I don't know what he did. There's no way of seeing what he did. At the end of that, he said, okay, now put on the lights. And when the lights came on, he told my brother, you're all right, get up and walk. And sure enough, after that, my brother was walking and doing everything. He didn't have any of the symptoms of food poisoning. The bowl of water which he brought, a tasla as they call it, that had a lot of oily stuff floating around on it. But he said that I don't have the powers to cure you also. He told me that. So you'll have to go through the treatment course. I was actually in bed. I couldn't get to eat normal food for 3 weeks. It was that bad. So that was one incident which I saw, which I still don't know how he did it, what his powers were. The fact is, my brother got cured in 15, 20 minutes, whatever time he took that evening.
A long time ago, you were also detected with cancer and made a complete recovery. Is there any spiritual incident connected with that as well?
Yes, actually there is, because thanks to a friend of mine, I had been to Puttaparthi and I had met Satya Sai Baba, not for any purpose of my own, but I had gone there because he had asked me to come and talk to the students in the management school which he was running in Puttaparthi. And I was the managing director of Maruti, and he wanted me to give a lecture to the boys, which I did. And after the lecture, he had met me and said that people were very happy with your lecture and all that. So that way I knew him. Now, in 97, when my prostate cancer was detected, and there was a lot of discussion going on as to what treatment and where treatment should be done. And nobody was quite sure what is the best treatment to follow. And we were reading up various magazines and things to find out what is the right course to do. Now, it so happened that we were going to have a dealers conference of Maruti vendors and dealers. So we went to Bangalore for the conference. And Bangalore was a place which was, very close to Puttaparthi. So the shifting of the conference first from Goa to Bangalore made it possible for me to go to Puttaparthi. We went to Puttaparthi to meet Sai Baba. He gave me a personal audience. He has an inner room where he meets. And there he caught hold of my hand and told me that don't do surgery and come back to me with good news about your treatment. When I came back, I talked to Dr. Fuchs, the head of the oncology radiation department in Sloan Kettering in New York. And he said, yes, you come, I'll treat you. I have a new treatment called three-dimensional conformal radiation. And he was, I think, the only person at that time who was doing it. He had more or less invented this treatment. He said, we'll do that treatment for you. So we went to New York. And at the end of it, he said, I'm very sorry, I can't treat you. So I said, what's happened? He said, your prostate is being covered by a bowels and I can't treat you. So I said, then what do I do? He said, this stage, what I suggest is you go back to India and for 3 weeks continue with the hormone therapy which you're following. And I'll see you after 3 months to see whether there's any change in your condition and therefore I can treat you. So I came back to Delhi and continued. And after 3 months, I went back to New York and he again did this CAT scan. This was at the end of 1997, December end. And then he did this CAT scan and he said to about 50%, the prostate is now visible. So I can start treatment, but probably after 50% of the treatment is done, I will not be able to continue. Then we'll have to look at some other form of treatment for that. So we started the treatment. Now this radiation course is 45 sittings of things that takes 3 months to complete. Halfway through, which means after a month and a half, he again did this CAT scan. And while this was going on, he actually came into the radiation room where this CAT scan was done. And he said, which is very unusual, he normally doesn't do that. And then he said, it's amazing, but your entire prostate is now visible and I can treat you. So we continued the treatment and the treatment was completed sometimes in March, I think. And then we had invited him and his wife for dinner. We had become quite good friends over this 3-month period. So we invited him for dinner at an Indian restaurant. At dinner, we were telling him about how this happened and what Sai Baba had told me about not getting surgery done. So he said, yes, surgery would have been absolutely the wrong treatment in your case. I'm glad you didn't go for surgery. It should not have been done. Then I told him about what Sai Baba had said, that come back to me with good news about your treatment. He said, now when you tell me all this, it seems to me that your Sai Baba did a miracle, because the way your prostate got uncovered over this period and the way I could complete this treatment is something which I never thought would be possible. In fact, I've decided I'm going to use your case as a teaching experience to all my students here, and to show them that what looks impossible can actually in some cases become possible. And this looks like a miracle to me. And then his wife asked more about Sai Baba. And I told them so. So next morning, we got a call from them. He said, I looked up on the internet about Sai Baba, and I'm ashamed of myself that all these years I never knew anything about a man like him and what he has been able to do and the kind of miracles which he has done. And yours was clearly a miracle. It's quite amazing. In fact, the diagnosis of my prostate itself was a miracle, because we used to have an annual medical checkup. But getting the PSA checked was never a part of the checkup in any medical protocol which any hospital was following at that time. All doctors said, forget it, we'll look at it after 6 months, 1 year. This PSA keeps coming, it doesn't mean a thing. They were not serious about it at all. But for some reason, we followed through, and that is how it got diagnosed, then it got treated. And the last thing Sai Baba told me was, now you go, your cancer is cancer.
Unbelievable.
So this was the other experience I have had. Now, as I said, I don't go to spiritual leaders for guidance in life. But these are incidents which have happened in my personal knowledge before me. I don't know the explanations. I don't know why it's happened. But I do know that in my entire life, all these years, events have happened which I have never thought would happen. I mean, when I started in the IAS, I had no idea that I would ever end up in the automobile industry. Nobody from the IAS ever ends up in the automobile industry. There was no automobile industry in India. How this came about is another story, but that's how the way it happened.
So coming to the present, what has spirituality come to mean to you now?
It's the same thing. I still believe that there's a higher power. But I believe that a person's life should be lived in a manner which is guided what I have always kept as my principles, which is what Krishna told Arjun. Fundamentally, do your duty to the best of your ability and do not worry about the results. Leave the result to me. And I think that philosophy has helped me get over a lot of, everybody's life has ups and downs. And during the down period, when you have things going wrong, despite your having done your best, I think at that time, the ability to prevent stress, to lead a normal life, to keep doing your work without any kind of handicap because you are not convinced that you will get results. I think this teaching helped substantially, because I said, look, the result is not in my hand. I have done what I had to do. I've done the best to my knowledge. I couldn't have done better than what I did. Now it's up to God, if I may use the word God, to determine what happens. And ultimately, everything worked out in the right manner. Okay, it took time, it caused a lot of various kinds of issues, but everything did work out.